Welcome back. It's been a rather interesting few days, especially if you are in the West, particularly if you are a British subject or live in Britain or have an interest, either you live in the Anglosphere or you have an interest in the English and the British tradition. I'm talking about nothing that is relatively new to most people. In any case, as always, I thought perhaps I should share my position on some of the events that have taken place with the intention of providing perhaps a different perspective. I could not think of any other way to communicate this, and I found perhaps what would be a useful, which I hope you would agree, a useful way of providing a balanced perspective. What you're about to see in the few minutes that follow are videos by other people, short clips of the same, you could say, honoring protocol, let me use that word, that Meghan was expected to gift to our beloved late Queen. Have a look at the video first, and then I will provide a commentary, a general commentary. Now, what I have done also is I have also included in the description, so once you have finished watching the videos, please pause this particular video, go to the description section and take a look at the video descriptions or the video clips with the titles, so that you understand, if you do not already know, so you understand the people in the video. Now let's start with the videos. And another thing I should say is I have simply, rather than commenting on each video, I have combined the videos. They're very short, very short. These are clips, but they convey in video form much more than I could say with words. Someone has once said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now I think a video is worth 1 billion words. So these videos and clips will emphasize what I'm hoping to share in my limited capacity. Now let's take a look.
The culture of respect is one of the most important values in Japanese society. It's reflected in Japanese language, manners, and customs. Status and hierarchy are important in modern Japanese society, just like they were in feudal Japan.
The Queen will be joining them on the balcony.
That's where he is at this moment. You see here, this just happened a couple of minutes ago.
Majesty, I don't know what to do anymore.
Well,
I think I'm supposed to do this now. I've practiced on the way now.
well, so we're normally seeing each other at kids' things.
Yeah,
so.
our children just go to the same school.
Your Majesty, Prime Minister.
Your Majesty.
Balẹ̀ kan ní ó máa dọ́tán come closer ṣàpapọ̀ má tàbí ẹ mú mọ̀ pé wọ́n ò sick náà. God bless you.
God bless you. God bless you. Hustle am. You no get money, you get no respect. You no get money, you get no respect. You no get money, you get no respect. That to hustle am.
Arowa Okanwa inside Boku. Ye can't piri center the ground because they don't get kobo. Even rather small mommy change cause he no one dollar without money. You say we see how you pop the cool. Can't man the man can you respect. For that position where you stand up for a man, I swear you get to fear. Even
Interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Now let me bring your attention to perhaps the video that in many ways is the main, you might say, reason for my commentary. What you see here is an extract from the Netflix series that was done by Meghan and Prince Harry. Rather than what is said, I like you to pay attention to two different things. What was said, but pay attention to the eyes of both people. Your eyes are usually the window to your soul. Your eyes reveal sometimes much more than your body wants to give. Pay attention to what is said, and then pay closer attention. Now, you might have to watch this video twice, but pay attention to what the eyes say. Powerful, right? Very powerful. I'm going to focus primarily on the curtsying aspect to the video. Let me start by saying this. Irrespective of who you are or where you're from, we have people who came before us. We have people who, through their blood and sweat, tears, and sometimes their lives, paved the way for us. As part of that legacy that they left, they also left us with an inheritance. That inheritance comes in several ways. Sometimes it's a language, sometimes it's a culture, a set of habits, sometimes it could also be a location, geographical, sometimes it's simply items of precious value, arts, sometimes some crafts, monetary or sentimental or emotional value. We call all of those traditions. A tradition is simply a frozen culture, a frozen habit, a frozen ancestry gift through time, passed down through generations. Generally speaking, for something to be a tradition, it has to have been applied, in my opinion, now this is my opinion, it has to have been applied, I believe, for at least a few hundred years. That number reduces if you have homogeneity amongst the people. But if you have a heterogeneous community, then sometimes it could take as much as 300 or 400 years. A case in point would be the United States of America or Canada. So North America will fall into the category of communities or people who are not homogeneous, but also very large. And therefore, what will be called a tradition or culture, a frozen habit, takes much longer. Think about it from the perspective of freezing something rather than refrigerating something. You take a piece of, slice of turkey and you place it in the freezer, it gets frozen very fast, obviously depending on the freezer. In any case, it defrosts much slower. It takes a while before it's fully defrosted. The same piece of turkey placed in the fridge would never freeze and therefore would be at or near room temperature. Now what this simply means is that if you think about tradition or culture from the perspective of what's frozen and what's not frozen, the longer the culture has been able to survive or last, you can compare that to something that has been frozen. That's where we get traditions from. Norms, etiquette, decorums, values, language, transported from one generation to the next generation, given as an inheritance, preserved, nurtured, protected. We call that frozen culture or frozen gifts or traditions. If a culture is still relatively new or it's a heterogeneous community and it's very large, it takes much longer for you to have a uniform or generally agreed tradition. So we call that no different from placing milk in fridge. Its useful shelf life is much shorter. Now, I have used the explanation to start this conversation for a number of reasons. When you watch Meghan talk about her experience before and after meeting our late Queen, what I was struck with was there was an aura, an aroma of dishonor. There was a contempt. She was contemptuous. There was a feeling of a ridicule, almost as though she was insulting the tradition, the culture, and the people. Now, recognize that as British subjects, generally speaking, most British people, if asked, are very clear in their position about what they think about the monarchy. We're free people. We are no longer governed by the monarchy. However, even those who disagree with the role of the monarchy in our British society today, there is still a sense of respect of what was passed down. There is a sense of awe and honor of that history, whether that history was good, bad, or indifferent. There is a sense of united, as a people, we are more united, despite not necessarily agreeing on what many people might consider to be cultural way of the British life, we respect our founding fathers and mothers. We respect our ancestors. We respect the tradition. We respect our inheritance. We may not continue to teach it to our children. However, we find it very offensive when other people, other cultures, come into our homes, having been invited in good faith, leave the shores of our island, and then make fun of what we consider to be part of our tradition. It's our tradition. You don't have to accept it, but to mock, to be contempt of what we consider to be our tradition is just wrong. As I watched Meghan and Harry, more specifically, what occurred to me was that what we see in a lot of young people these days are two qualities or attributes: ignorance and arrogance. What I call a lethal cocktail. Someone once said that if you do not know what happened before you were born, that you're bound to go through life acting like a child. In other words, modern women and modern men these days are not aware of their history, their traditions, their culture, their ancestry line. And so we make fun of things without understanding the significance of those things. I decided in today's session, rather than to speak and explain, to use examples. In the videos you saw, and I arranged the videos in that manner to demonstrate that in Britain, our prime ministers courtesy to the king or the queen or the prince. I wanted to demonstrate and show two separate female prime ministers courtesying to the king and the prince, the heir to the throne. I also wanted to show a princess from Denmark, a royal princess from Denmark, courtesying to our queen consort, Camilla. I wanted to show the Princess of Wales, Kate, courtesying to her mother-in-law, our beloved Queen Elizabeth. I also wanted to show Queen Anne courtesying to her mother's coffin during the funeral. The point being to demonstrate that even Brits, we respect that tradition. But I didn't stop there. I wanted to also include, which I did, other heads of states and other people of importance showing the same act of honor. Now, we do not courtesy, this is a mistake, those who are not aware of the significance of the tradition. We do not courtesy or bow out of respect. No, respect is earned. We courtesy to show honor. This brings me to the videos I also included towards the end, showing people who share my ethnic image and Meghan's supposedly ethnic image, courtesying to each other. In this particular instance, I have included a culture, a tradition that is well known in parts of West Africa. Specifically in this instance, I've used videos from different parts of the continent, but particularly from Nigeria. If you're familiar with the culture in Nigeria, Igbos have a way of showing honor. Yorubas have a way of showing honor. The Hausas and the Fulanis have a way of showing honor. One of the ways we do so is the prostrate. We don't prostrate. We bow, we courtesy to someone who we believe deserves the honor. The honor is not always linked to royal status. It could be age, and usually age. It could be a family of significance. Sometimes it occurs between men to men, or men to elderly men. Sometimes it occurs between women to men, and sometimes you even find that someone who is older will courtesy or bow to someone who is younger. It's a sign of honor. Honor is not the same as respect. Respect is earned. Honor is simply a gift, recognizing someone else's uniqueness, their position, their status, recognizing their presence, and using in a physical way a recognized method of saying, I'm before you. Now I should say this, that in the videos you see of black people courtesying to others, you might agree with me that it looks even more exaggerated than the British courtesying approach. The British courtesy is very simple. The delivery is very subtle. In parts of Africa, the person courtesying, and I've seen this myself, and I have been part of it myself, you show honor irrespective of location. So you could be well dressed, and if you are in public, the honor far exceeds the attire or the clothes you were wearing. You will see people lie on the floor outside in front of someone as a way of showing honor or reverence. It's a cultural thing. Certain cultures do it in a different way, and other cultures do it in a unique way. Now, the courtesying of the black people in the videos or clips that I have included, one of those videos is by a former president of Nigeria, teaching his grandson how to show respect, how to courtesy, how to bow to elders. In parts of Africa, we call it elders. We have places where we have kings, we have chiefs, we have elders. Sometimes it's perhaps to someone who occupies a position of authority. The point of all of this is to simply say, when honor is given, we should never snare at the methodology used to show honor. Our late queen, our beloved queen, was respected so much and loved so much for several reasons. She was seen as the mother of the country. She'd been in the position for well over 75 years. And most people had grown up with her and seen the world and understood the world through her eyes. It was a simple act of respect. But I also included, if you didn't notice, which I hope you didn't, or rather, which I hope you noticed rather than didn't, an interaction between our King Charles and another king and his wife, Queen. And what I would like you to do is go back, if you can, and perhaps rewatch the videos. What is powerful is you see our Queen Consort, Camilla, courtesy to the king, not our king, a different king, and also courtesy to his wife. What people fail to understand who are not familiar with the Anglosphere or the English tradition, you do not courtesy every time you come into the presence of the Queen. You do it the first time you come into the presence of the Queen on that particular day. So it's a thing that is done. Perhaps if I meet you for the first time, it's the first time I have seen you, then that act is my way of showing you honor. Once it's done for that particular day, I don't have to repeat it every time I come back into your presence. Now, if I leave your presence formally in a formal setting where there are guests, and I come back into your presence, I can repeat the same act as a way of showing honor, for the reason being that there may be new people in this space and who were not present the first time, and therefore I do so as a way of being invited into your presence. I do so as a way of saying, I'm still in honor. I'm still in the aroma. I'm still wearing the fragrance of honor. I would hope that by watching some of the clips I have included, whether you're from a culture, from the Orientals or India, or you're from the continent of Australia or Africa, or whether you're from the continent of Europe or the Americas, what I would hope that you would agree is that honor was deserved in this particular case. And honor should have been given to the Queen in this particular instance by Meghan. What I would hope you would agree as well is that there are some conversations that should not take place in a public sphere. If Meghan felt it to be absurd to show honor to not just our Queen, but her grandmother-in-law, what I would hope is that perhaps you can have a sense that this is not an issue related to your gonads or the melanin content of your skin, which is how the divide between Meghan, Harry and the royal family has been presented to the world. We are individuals first. We should treat each other as individuals first, which is partly why I disagree vehemently and strongly with the argument that Meghan is putting across. Everything is not about race. Sometimes it's more to do with your character, your personality, and your mannerisms than it is to do with the content of or the color of your skin. The content of your character usually shines first. Now, I say this simply to conclude with the following statements. Someone wise once said to me, you don't take a gun when you go hunting in a small pond for fishes. You don't take a bazooka to the wrong place. There are times when you should use and be tactical in your interactions. Black people have made a fundamental mistake in the West. They use the race card too easily, too freely, without evidence, without reason, and when it's not justified. Racial issues are way too important for us to trivialize such issues. By doing so, we dilute the significance of the necessary change that is needed. Like the boy that cried wolf. Once you say it too many times, you dilute the significance of the wolf. And someday, recognizing that you've said wolf too often and nothing close to a wolf was around, someday the wolf will come. And when you cry wolf, the people around will say, this must be one of those. We have to become a lot more careful and sophisticated and subtle in distinguishing between traditions, etiquettes, mannerisms in a social context, and not conflating that with prejudice and preferences, and not saying all issues are racial. I, for example, there are people I do not associate with. These people share my ethnic image. My reason for not associating with them is primarily because we have different sets of morals, different values. Their principles are not aligned with mine. Their decorum socially are horrendous. Their behaviors are not welcoming. They do not come to interactions in good faith. There's no peace when I'm around them. For that reason, I simply take my honor to other places, having shaken the dust off my feet. It doesn't mean that I do not like them based on the color of their skin. It simply means that I've chosen to exclude them from my inner circle based on the content of their character. It's not always about your gonads, and it's not always about the melanin content of your skin. This is not always a black and white thing. Now let me conclude by saying two other things. Number one, when we talk about the royal family, for those who are not part of or British subjects or part of the Anglosphere, you're disconnected from the story. For you, perhaps it's entertainment. A country is simply a collection of families. So let's bring this down to the level of the family. I know for a fact that in every family and in every household, there are rules. There's a code of conduct, sometimes spoken or unspoken. There are things that are accepted. I have been to places where people have said to me, and in particular instance, my best friend expects me when I arrive at his home to take my shoes off in a particular part of the house. I respect that. This is his home. He sets the rules and I have to comply. Usually when I walk into people's homes, I ask, would you like me to take my shoes off? And I listen very carefully to the body language and the initial response. Sometimes some people would. They just do not know how to ask. And I don't wait for them to say yes, because sometimes they are embarrassed. I take my shoes off willingly. Why? It's your home. You set the rules. When I arrive at your house, I knock on the door first. I don't just open the door. I don't start smoking in your house, although I do not smoke. It would be wrong of me to just start smoking in your house. It would be wrong of me in front of your kids to use profanity. It would be wrong of me to use any form of attacks on you. Abuse towards your loved ones in your home. There are rules. Now, you understand that very clearly when we bring you close to your family. What Meghan did was no different to being invited to someone's family, choosing by choice, without force, without any threat, without any coercion to join that family, but going to that family and expecting to change the family, trying to ignore all the rules of the house, leaving, taking everything with her as she left, and making fun of the rules of the family. Now, there are places I have been to, and I have seen family conducts, and perhaps they were not to my taste or liking, but I showed them honor, because honor was deserved, and more importantly, because it was their home. They had the choice. I was invited. I was the guest. As I watched Meghan speak, and as I looked into her eyes, and I hope you would go back and re-watch that interaction and watch her eyes. She is looking at the camera and at the person she's speaking to, and her eyes are saying, isn't it ridiculous that I had to courtesy to the Queen? She makes fun of the act of showing honor. By doing so, she shows her dishonor. The aroma, the scent, the fragrance of dishonor can be smelt despite not being in the same presence. But more importantly, let me draw your attention to who I hold more responsible. Harry. I would like you to go back and watch Harry's eyes as she speaks. That is the look that every man, every boy, recognizes. When we fall short of good behavior, when we recognize that something is wrong, we've done something wrong, when we recognize that perhaps what we are doing would not make our mothers, our fathers, our loved ones proud, we have that look. Sometimes we bow our heads. There is a sense at that particular moment, Harry recognized how deep and how complex the web of division Meghan is sowing within his family and also across nations. Most young girls were raised under the Disney fairy tale movies. Most want to be princesses. The idea that once in a generation, once in a lifetime, someone who is black, supposedly, I keep using that reference and I keep using that qualification, and I use that for a reason. Perhaps I'll do a session on that, but you have to be careful about people who weaponize and use your emotions and weaponize gonads and skin color for their purposes. You know, but this is not the time. It's certainly not the time. So let me not distract myself from that. I'll go back to my conclusions. I think it was unnecessary. The series, understand this is how deep the dishonor goes. Although the series has just been aired, that series was produced before the Queen and our Queen died. She had every intention for that to be shown, and she understood that it would be seen by the Queen. Now, thankfully, and a great loss to us, a woman who served this nation so graciously, so prosperously, a woman who served this nation so beautifully. As I'm sure many people would see how much she was esteemed at her death and honored at her death. I am pleased, for one, that our Queen Elizabeth never got to see the Netflix video. Now here is what I will call and ask you to consider as a call to action. As young women, women dream about being princesses. Those who live in the West, because we are in the land that has always belonged, from a historical perspective, to people who perhaps share different ethnic image to you, to myself. One of the things we're hoping for is that whilst we may be born on the land but not born off the land, we hope that our succeeding generations have the same claim to the land as those whose ancestors paid a price over a longer period of time. We hope at some point that our tears and sweat and blood, sacrifices and love for the land are considered equally as those who were bequeathed the land. And as such, what we're hoping for is a society where we have people without physical characteristics being used as a way of acceptance. My greatest disappointment, and I say this with a broken heart, is the responsibility that Meghan was afforded as the first black woman, supposedly, married into the royal family, was something she never understood. It was a significant duty, honor, and responsibility, not to her per se, but in breaking down generational stereotypes, in unifying generations, in changing the narrative, and in fostering what some of the great teachers of our time, one of which was Martin Luther King, was trying to achieve by saying it's possible, and the spirit within is the same, the mind is the same. The body might be different, but there is only one human race, and we don't have to keep fighting about things that are not important. She had the opportunity to bring people together, races together, ethnicities together, irrespective of whether this particular family wanted her or not. Now put that to the side. I'm not arguing about whether she was wanted or loved. Put that to the side. The role she played was huge. Now I'm going to end with Diana, Princess Diana, our Princess Diana. She was loved. She was not a saint. She was not even particularly fond of her husband or her husband's behaviors. She chose a different path. But even as she chose a different path, she stayed in honor. She never publicly humiliated, dishonored, or attacked the institution. She understood the role she played. She understood the sacrifices she made. She understood her choices. You see, with Meghan, I have a fundamental issue with her. And I see this issue across society at large. Choices come with constraints. They also come with costs, and they come with consequences. Most importantly, the choices you and I make are not always solutions. They are trade-offs. When Princess Diana married into the royal family, she was making a trade-off. There were constraints that were set before her. She understood that. She may have been aware of the magnitude, but when she got into the space, she understood the constraints and consequences of her decision, and she chose the right path. When our Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, married into the royal family, she made a choice. She had dated the prince for 10 years. By choosing to move into the family, she understood the constraints and the trade-offs she had to make. What I see from William and Meghan is a woman who did not understand the constraints, did not understand the costs, did not understand the consequences of her decisions, and was refusing to make trade-offs, to make sacrifices. I wish her peace, and I really wish her happiness. I will, at a different time, on a different day, I'm going to do a few sessions. One of the sessions will be the complications and the cost of intermarrying, something we don't talk about. I will talk about, in greater extent, a number of issues with modern dating, and how by choosing what is a progressive approach rather than tossing away all of the traditional ways of our lives, we're doing more harm to our children. The two sessions will be not necessarily because of Meghan and Harry. I couldn't care less about either, but more so because I'm thinking beyond both of them. I'm looking at their offsprings, their lineage. What you have in this very sad family issue is what I call a fork. You've had a genealogy, a lineage, a tradition that has been consistently following the same path. And for the first time in the British monarch, or the first time in modern British monarchy, there's been a fork. Prince Harry has been, I'll use the word, coerced, because he has no choice. He's been convinced to choose a different path. What about his kids? His kids are going to be raised away from the family. They'll always be part of the family, but you know, you do not, sometimes you make sacrifices for the greater good of your kids. A lot of the issues we see in modern society today are decisions the parents made selfishly without thinking about the impact it would have on the kids. If both parties did not have kids, I would be fine with their decision. The fact that they have kids, are you suggesting the kids should not be connected to their roots, should divorce themselves from their family, from their lineage, from their tradition? What culture are you hoping that they will adopt? The American culture? The Canadian culture? Their kids are from the Anglosphere. They are English. They're from the royal family. As much as the mother may not like the family, there will always be sons and heirs to the throne. You don't take your animosity, your anger, your ignorance, your arrogance, and place it before the kids. Our ancestors made sacrifices, not based on what they wanted, but because they realized something very subtle, that they do not inherit, and we do not inherit our land, our traditions, our culture from our ancestors, the people that came before us. Instead, we borrow the present from our future generation. And how we use such a responsibility will determine their future and their children's futures. The great book says, the sins of the father will live unto the children, even up to the third and the fourth generation. Irrespective of your position about this issue, keep one thing in mind. It's not about you alone. Sometimes you have to think about the greater good. It will be hard, but making the right decision is the best way to ensure that when your time comes, you can say, you know, I have peace. I have no regrets, and I did the best that I can. In closing, there's a famous story from the books of from the past. In particular, it says that Judas got the money. Judas was one of the disciples of Jesus, for those of you who believe the story. But pretend for a second that you either believe or perhaps you're aware of the story. 12 disciples, one decides to sell his master for a few pieces of silver. According to the storyteller, Judas received the money. When he had the money, he realized that the reality of happiness with the money in his pockets was not the same as the imagined experience. Judas found that he was filled with regret. Many people would say, with $90 million US, the world is your oyster. Well, like Judas went back and said, here is your money, take it back. Judas was so heartbroken, so cursed within, that he tried to give the money back. And when they refused to take back the money, he threw the money on the floor. He threw the money away. Meghan and Harry, be careful of what you become. Now you have the money in your hands. But more importantly, be careful of who you're becoming as you pursue this dream and this goal of happiness that you believe you deserve at any cost, and using whatever means is appropriate. I would hope, and I'm not making a prophetic statement, but I would hope that, like Judas, that you do not take it one step further. And we know how the story ends. I would hope for your kids and your grandkids to come. Reconciliation should not be removed from the table. Now, I hope that's been useful. God bless.